Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And super excited this week. I've got the very gorgeous Diana Nguyen all the way from over in the States. And I'll get you, Diana, to tell us where you are shortly. But she is the founder and designer at Madison Savile. And she will explain what that is and what she does, but also how she got there. It's a super, super cool story. So I met Diana through a mutual connection that we have, which is Ellen Rogan. And Ellen, when I've had her on the podcast, she said to me, Kim, you have to have Diana on the podcast. So Diana and I have caught up. I've got to know a bit about her story and it's amazing. So Diana, before we hear a little bit about some of this gorgeous story of yours, what excites you about having a conversation with me today about courage?
Well, one, I love the topic. I love your energy, Kim. And so when we first connected, I'm like, yeah, we're going to have fun in this conversation. And thank you for having me as well. What excites me about this conversation is that it's it's inspiring others that are listening to your podcast of all the things that they can do and the relatability and the everyday. And it's not just the big things, right? That you think about being courageous. It's even like the small things in your daily life that is considered courageous. So if anything is to inspire those that are listening to take that next step in whatever area of their life that is.
And that's such a beautiful point, though, isn't it? That it's not just those big moments.
Right.
It is also just the little teeny tiny things. Sometimes they're just getting out of bed every day for some people. That's
Absolutely.
courageous in itself. So, yeah. And I mean, this is why I'm so passionate about this and getting people like you on, because everyone has got courage somewhere in their life, whether
Yes.
they realize it or not. So,
Yes.
so
Yes.
on that note, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are? And then I want you to think about a time when courage first really popped into your world, where you realized it. And I don't care how far back you go, but where you had that first moment where you go, you know what, that was courageous.
Oh my gosh. There's so many. Where do I start? So, uh, founder designer of Madison Savile. Madison Savile is an inspirational brand of women's blazers and suits. But really, it's an inspirational brand of women's clothing because we are coming out with our second collection soon. Uh, yes, I'm excited. And it's not going to be just blazers and pants, but it's going to be French cuff shirts, wide-legged pants, skirts, but of course our signature blazers. And the reason why I say inspirational is because every blazer has words of affirmation on the inside, just reflecting on that collection. So the first collection is Unstoppable and Fierce, and that's lined on every blazer. And then our next collection that's coming out is Believe It, Feel It, See It. So that goes with, as you can only imagine, when you believe something, you have to feel it in your bones, right? In order for you to manifest it, for you to see it in your reality, in your world. And so it's just a constant reminder for those that are wearing it that believe in yourself, got to feel it, and then you will see it happen.
And what I love most is, well, one, and we will hear the story about how you got into this, because this is not your background.
No.
But secondly, these blazers, and although I haven't worn one, I have, obviously done a lot of Googling and searching and spying on you online. But I love it's actually sewn on the inside of the
It is.
blazers, these
Yes.
inspirational ones.
Yes.
Where did that come from? How did you? Oh, awesome. For those who are listening, you won't be able to hear, but she just opened her blazer and showed us it. Where did you get that idea from? That's so cool.
Well, it goes back to what you were hinting at, is that it didn't start with fashion. For me, I came from the finance tech background, and growing up, I'm the oldest of three girls, and so in a family that is very strict. And my stepdad was always like, you can only be a doctor or an engineer or accounting, but marketing and fashion and those aren't jobs according to them. And so when I went into that, I spent 15 plus years in fashion tech or finance tech, and then made that jump to fashion. And I get a lot of questions, why finance to fashion? And
Mm.
it's because, back to your question, I felt that there was more of a calling, a purpose to this. So there's more than just a fashion brand. I like to call it the Oprah of fashion. Should merging two worlds, right? Inspiration and fashion, because the purpose of Madison Savile is to be on the journey with the woman, to inspire her, to encourage her. It's helping and being part of changing the narrative for us, and whatever that looks like. Having being on a podcast like this, with you, uh, I'm the chair of the Women's Business Network, of the Beverly Hills Chamber of Commerce. I was there when it was 5 women, and now it's almost 100. And so we're growing fast. Also having, my own podcast as well. And then a portion of our proceeds go towards a charity that help women and their children. And so everything we do is to empower, inspire, impact our community and help change the narrative. And so it's something bigger than me, meaning it may be a blazer brand now, but I'm very open to where it goes. But all I know is the purpose behind it is much bigger than I am, and I fully believe that. And I'm very open to the journey, but being open to the journey also takes courage.
Yeah, especially when you've had a finance tech background. You've
Yes.
grown up in a family where fashion is, that's not a business, that's not a job, that's not serious.
Nope.
Being a doctor or a lawyer or, the work that you were doing, that's a job.
Yeah.
How did you go from working in finance tech to saying that you were following something that was like a purpose, like a calling, something bigger than you? Especially when you've come from a family where that's not how we rock and roll.
Yeah, it's tough because those that are listening can relate to this. Sometimes you feel like you're the black sheep of the family,
Mm.
or you're just constantly going upstream. Your family loves you, and especially your parents are very protective and they want the best for you. And so, of course, my last job was Microsoft. I was full time there, great benefits, established an amazing life. I was comfortable. And then for me to go, I'm going to leave this life that I have worked so hard to build, and also tell my parents that I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur in fashion. That is definitely very, very, I have to say, courageous, because of course the first thing they said to me is like, why? Why are you crazy? You're leaving such a great job, all these benefits, to going into something you don't even know. And that's part of being courageous, right? It's when you're following not the logic in your mind, but you're following your gut, your heart, and you can't see all the steps ahead of you, and you're jumping into, a cloud, a fog, darkness you can't see, right? And you just have to have that courage, that faith, that the next step will be shown to you, and just the courage to believe and trust in yourself too, right? That I can do this. I got myself this far. So let's go on a journey and adventure and see where this takes us. So it started with that, and I I went through a couple of career coaches to help me get to what that looks like, because I knew at the time when I was at Microsoft that I did not want to be here for long. This is not my life. I wanted something different. That calling got louder, that voice got louder. And so I started working with different coaches, and they both came to the same conclusion of, oh, you should be an entrepreneur. But then at that point, you're like, of what?
So and I love that you had coaches to do this, because I think that, you might have these ideas. Sometimes these ideas are great, but you just need them to, I don't know, you need to bounce the ideas off others, not for their permission, not even for their direction, but more for you. What did they see in you that led them to both say, yeah, you're meant to be an entrepreneur? What was that? Do you know?
And it's interesting though, Kim, because they're both very different. So one is a spiritual coach, and then the other one is neuroscience. So very
Oh,
different methods, right?
mm.
Brain and patterns and this and that. And then the other one's more on the spiritual soul level. And what they both saw is in terms of my strengths and my abilities and my gifts, right? Someone that is up for the challenge, that can see things in terms of a different perspective, that also gets bored easily, that likes to learn, right? Like you want to learn different things and you want to put the pieces together and build this puzzle and solve a problem. And all these things came to an entrepreneur. But that's great. But I don't know. I didn't know at the time what that was going to be. Madison Savile wasn't an idea yet at that time. And so it was more of leaning into that, right? To get to a point of, yeah, it's women's, and it's women's blazers and suits.
Oh, but so how did you, so when you've had both these coaches, both completely different, coming from different
Totally
angles,
different. Totally
yeah,
different.
and they both said you really should be an entrepreneur, so to speak.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel? Because at this stage, you've only worked in corporate, in
Yep.
finance tech, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yep. So
Yep.
how did that kind of play out for you when they've both said this?
Well, it was validating, and it was validating
Ah,
even more so that it was coming from different people, different methods,
so
right?
you felt it too, though,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It was
Got
very
it.
validating, in terms of, yeah, I can see that. I could totally be an entrepreneur. But it's funny at that time, I a lot of this is when I was living in Seattle, Washington, and a lot of entrepreneur friends. A lot of my community were entrepreneurs. They have their own business, all of that, and they always tell me that it is a journey. It is a roller coaster. All of this, and I don't have kids yet myself, but I can only assume that it's like being a parent, where you don't people tell you about being a mom and being a parent and this that, but you really don't know what it's like until you are. And I feel the same way with being an entrepreneur, where they tell me all these things, but I really didn't know what they mean until I'm in it. And I'm like, okay, this is a lot harder than they were saying.
Do you know, I was the same. So this is back in, I left corporate in 2009 and started a business in 2010. And but when people ask me about my journey, they say, "What's the biggest learning?" And I say, "It is an absolute roller coaster of both personal and professional development at a level that I had not even thought was a thing."
Yes. Yeah,
And yeah, like forget about running the business. It's just all of the other stuff and what you learn about yourself. Oh my
absolutely.
goodness, off the charts. Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like that's half the battle of
Yeah.
and I might have told you, I can't remember, but I feel like being an entrepreneur or being in a relationship always brings out the things that you need to heal from your past traumas or insecurities and doubts and things like that. Because if it's just yourself and you're going along life and you're like, okay, that's fine. But then now you're in something that is really bringing that to light. And because you have to heal from it, because you have to face it, because you have to overcome it, it is a lot more to it, because there are days as an entrepreneur, more than not, that you're questioning yourself and you're wondering, where is this going? Like, is there a light at the end of the tunnel, or why in the world did I choose to do this?
Oh, totally, totally. And that's only the stuff that's going on inside you, right?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
not even the stuff that could be coming from others. And how did you then do this? And did your parents accept it? Or, because again, going back to, traditionally you were saying that that wasn't a job. Have they accepted it or how's that played out?
Kind of. Well, I came out with this idea of Madison Savile in 2017. So I incorporated this company in 2017, and then I actually left Microsoft in 2018. And that was a big deal of leaving this life and going to something I don't really know what's going to happen. And here we are in 2024. They've been on this journey with me, but still to this day, if I come to them and I don't know, vent or ask them advice about something, right? Because as an entrepreneur and as a first time entrepreneur, you're going to face a lot of things that are new and that you have to learn. And then you have to reach out to your community. And you have to have the right community too to support you and to learn from and to make you feel like you're not alone. Because one of my friends, who's also an entrepreneur, she's like, "Are you even a business if you don't face these things?" you know? And like, that's true. That's very true. But going back to your question about my parents, so anytime there's a challenge that I have to face, they always, and I come at it at a different perspective now that I see it from their eyes, that they just want to protect their daughter and they see that she's just so stressed out all the time and this and that. It's like they will always say, "Why don't you just go back to corporate? Like just quit. Just quit. Like, why are you doing this? You're spending so much money because fashion is very capital intensive. You're just stressed all the time. You can just go back and I'll be just fine."
Oh my gosh, I get that as well, especially at the moment because I've changed the focus of what I'm doing. And I get so many people saying, just go back and get a job. You could get a really good high paying job back in
Yep,
corporate.
totally.
And as much as I loved my corporate world, and I'm sure you did too, I learned a lot, met a lot of people, a lot of goodness came out of it. But if I had to go back right now, I would literally stick needles in my eyes. Not an exaggeration. So
Well,
I'm
I mean,
assuming you were similar.
yeah, exactly. You've been there, and
Yeah.
so it's just it's funny because I'm in an interesting spot because I am bootstrapping my business, and so I do both. So I've I've been in corporate for 15 plus years, quit and spent last 7, 8 years just full time. And then now I do both where I consult. And then after I do my consulting job, I switch over to Madison Savile because I'm bootstrapping, right? I don't have any investors at the moment. I'm just so I can move along and build this next collection and having, one foot in each world, it's like you took the other pill in the matrix. So you see now, you're like, no, I don't want this to be the rest of my life.
But isn't that beautiful? Like you get to see both worlds
hmm
and obviously from there, obviously make the call where you go. But you moved from Seattle to LA, didn't you, to
Yes.
pursue this business? Like you didn't just have an idea and dabble on the side. Like you've gone in. Can you share a bit about how that sort of played out?
So usually people have life-changing events every, I don't know, 5, 7 years, whatever. It's spaced apart. It doesn't happen all at one time. And for me, I felt like it happened all at one time, Kim, where when the same year, so 2018, I told my team, my manager at Microsoft, okay, I'm ready to quit. Actually, they were so supportive. They knew what I was doing the whole time and I told them that when I'm here, I'll give you 100%. But at a certain point, when I know I'm going to quit, I'll give you, I don't know, 6 months advance notice until I get there. At the same time, I also decided to freeze my eggs.
Can
because
I ask how old you are?
at the time or now?
Yep.
At the
At the
time,
time when you froze your eggs, yes.
34.
34. Great. Thank
Yep.
you. Just gives context. When you're
Oh
saying
yes.
freeze eggs, it gives context. Yeah.
Yeah. So at 34, and it's because at that time Microsoft, it was very new benefit that came out, and so they rolled out with that benefit. And I told myself, if I'm gonna quit, I'm not dating anybody right now. I'm gonna move to California, start this business. I don't know where my life is going, right? I should probably freeze my eggs and utilize this benefit while I'm still here.
What
And
was the
so,
benefit that Microsoft offered?
yes, yep.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, most tech companies now, do offer that benefit.
That's
Um,
cool. Yeah.
aside from the IVF and whatnot, now you have egg freezing as part of the benefit, and that was very new at that time, 6 years ago, and so I did that. So froze my eggs, quit my job. I actually met my now husband the same year.
Of course you
And
did.
then 6 months later, we moved to LA. So that year, 2018, 2019, was a huge year of taking all of these leaps. not knowing, right, what's going to happen. For example, going back to freezing my eggs, I did it. I wasn't planning to meet anyone because I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to move to LA. And so I don't know when I'm going to meet someone. And ironically, I met him during the process while I was going through my egg freezing round at my best friend's wedding, of course. So, of course. So you never know, taking that leap of taking things into your hands, your life, and where it will lead you. But moving, it was, I was planning to move down, and then I met my husband, my now husband, and he was living about 3 hours away from where I was living at the time.
In
And
Seattle.
in Seattle. So I lived in Seattle and he lived 3 hours south of Seattle. And
Yes.
so uh he interrupted, I should say, my plan to move to LA. And so I moved down to be with him, and I only lasted 6 months because it wasn't an area, a small town, and I'm going to create and open this fashion brand and build this fashion brand. It wasn't a place to do that. And so, I told him, I almost got to the point of like, we might have to do a long distance because I'm going to continue my path to LA because he worked in that town. That was the headquarters. But things happen for a reason. And he's like, you know what? I am going to move with you. And so we both moved to LA in 2019, and then COVID hit. So
Yeah, of course it did. But how beautiful that you've met this guy who's not in LA, right? So he's not on the path that you're on. However, he joins forces with you and together you move. Oh, what a
yes.
beautiful, and when you made this decision, he wasn't even in the picture, right? Because you didn't even know him.
Nope, none of it. So that's why it's
I
interesting
love it.
where you can't plan for these things, right? And you just have to take that next step. You just have to know of what your next step is and be sure of it, and then everything else will come after. Because you can't.
And that's not easy though, is it? That's not easy,
No.
especially given you have been, a high achiever working at, a really big company doing big jobs.
Yes.
To
Yes.
to not know what, really anything other than the next step is, but knowing inside you that it's the right thing to do
Yeah.
and trusting it. I have these conversations all the time, but it's only the few that actually make the move and do what you did, which is just incredible. Have you always been someone that has trusted your gut? Like even back when you were younger, was this something that was a quality of yours?
Great question. It's actually something that has always been told to me, and it's funny that I'm saying that because I'm that person that I'm still trying to strengthen that, listening to my intuition, listening to my gut, practicing more on doing that because I operated so much in the logical side, the brain, right? In terms of what I did for so long. I was in tech, I was in finance, I was in accounting. It's all about logic, it's all about numbers, it's all about working with accounting and engineering. And so I was very much in my head all the time. And when you start paying attention to your gut, to your intuition, where it's that initial thought, right? And then you talk yourself out of it because of your mind, your thoughts, and logic and brain and whatnot. The judge is what I call it. And then you go with, I don't know, plan C instead of your initial thought that came into your mind. And when you look back, you're like, oh, I should have listened to my gut, my intuition, right? And it's that practice of looking back and reflecting like, oh, that was my gut or that was my intuition, and trying to lean into that more. And it's tough coming from a world where it's all about, the logic and the numbers and this and that. So I have to say it's very tough. And even more so as an entrepreneur, it's actually very important. It's the also what they call feminine and masculine energy too, because for so long you're operating in your masculine, especially, the job and the role that you're doing, that incorporating back the feminine, and especially as an entrepreneur, it's tough, it's hard. And it definitely
Very
takes
much.
practice for sure.
And I was only interviewing a woman yesterday on the podcast and talking about exactly this fact. I've had 30 years in financial services and very much embraced my masculine
Yep.
energy,
Yep.
believe that I've completely suppressed my feminine
Yep.
energy. And I know you understand what I'm talking about. There'll be others that will have no idea, but just
Yeah.
work with it. And it was once I really allowed that feminine energy to come through, using all the benefits of what I'd learned operating in a different world, bringing the two together, that's where the real goodness started coming out. So
Right.
I totally get what you're saying. Were you good at maths, or did you like maths and numbers when you were growing up?
I can't. Oh no. Um,
Into finance.
well, my dad. So as a child, I've always, loved marketing. I love psychology. I love art, creativity, nature, all of that. But growing up, and especially because I'm the oldest of three girls, it was more dictated to me what I should do. So I went to finance tech, and my middle sister, so the one next to me, is a doctor, and the third one, my youngest sister, is followed in my footsteps, and she's also in finance tech too. And so each of us kind of went in the direction that we were told to do. And so that's another thing where, doing 15 years of that, you're good at it because you're experienced in it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I love it because, or else I started my career at Deloitte, one of the big four
Mhm.
accounting firms. And, everybody at the time, my starting class, it was, oh, I want to be a partner. I want to be a director. I'm going to get my CPA. Honestly, Kim, anytime anybody asks me that, I'm like, I want to run away.
Because everyone just wants to go and climb the corporate ladder and make partner, and you're just like, I just want to run away.
Yes.
So so go back. When you were growing up, what did you want to be? Like, if it wasn't dictated what was expected of you,
hmm
and what were your dreams? Like, what did you think when you were a little girl growing up? What did you dream you'd one day like to be doing?
Well, it's funny because I always loved marketing, and it's
Mm.
always the CEO that I wanted to be. And I say that because, little girls, you hear stories of playing dolls, playing house. And, me with two little sisters, I remember instead of playing any of that, I was the CEO and they were my assistants.
I'm sure they loved that. Not.
So since I was young, I love being in business. I love, running a company, having an idea, and marketing it, branding it, and the psychology of how do you get to people and their thinking and selling and branding what your product is, right? And it's funny because today, where I am at now, after 15 plus years of being in finance tech, it's actually really hard to snap out of that. Meaning, and you would understand I guess the corporate way of doing things, and again, going into your feminine, and your feminine is more of going with the flow, right? Going with the flow, following your gut, following your intuition. What are you feeling? And I'm not saying like 100% it should be that. It's a balance. Like, in order to be a good leader, you have to have a balance of both. And I'm very tilted to one side still.
Oh, wow. Oh, that is so interesting. But so then when the two coaches, the career coaches, have both
Yeah.
conclusively said that, entrepreneurship is in your cards, it's like, and I asked you how you felt about that, you were like, it was validation.
Yes.
Because since you're a little girl, you were
Yep.
going to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, it's funny though, because liking or going into a career which is very left brain, very logical, and something like accounting and finance, and again, I know this firsthand because it's
I
been
know
my
you do.
Yeah, it's, if you don't love it, it's hard work.
So hard.
I mean, it's a slog. I mean, I loved maths, so maths and science were actually my subjects. So that part of it I actually really enjoyed. But if it wasn't even something that was kind of your thing, but like you said, you then got good at it, right? So
Yep.
that becomes your identity, really.
Yeah, because I do what I do love is process, and I've
Ah.
done a lot of, projects in the past for process improvement, business assessment in terms of that strategy. Absolutely love that. But when it comes to numbers, and even it's funny because I'm sure you get this too, because you've been in that world for a long time, people are like, oh, maybe you can be the CFO or you can be the, and I want to run away. I'm like, I know that is my past and my experience, but I really want to pivot away from that into something that I've always wanted to do. And like I said, whether that's just, blazers for Madison Savile or something more than just blazers for Madison Savile, that's the direction I want to go. And I've noticed now that I'm doing both worlds at the moment, it is very tough, Kim, for me to sit still. In a corporate job, you're there at your desk, especially now, remote work on Zoom or Teams or whatever it is you're using. And it's just meetings all day long. And then you have to find the time to do your work. And it's just tough. And all I do is I'm like a cat, stare outside the window at my desk, wanting to be out, to wanting to build relationships and make connections and this and that. And so that's a part of and I think that's also a part of the entrepreneur side too, where I love meeting people. I love learning. I love building that rapport. At the time when I was in full time, I was actually an auditor as well. And so many of my clients, they're like, Diana, I like you as a person. I don't like what you do. And I'm like, I know, I'm aware. She's like, why aren't you in marketing? Why are you doing what you're doing? Because even they saw that there was more, that I could do than what I was doing.
Wow, you get the comment, I like you as a person, I don't like what you do.
Yes, yes.
And that's because they just saw you as doing so much more than what you were doing a job
Yes,
as opposed to doing
yes,
what lights you up and that uses the gifts that you've been given
yes.
to bring to the world. So how did all of this then translate into blazers? Like, why blazers?
Well, great question. So Blazers, again, I almost went into the wine business because I start with that, right? I started with, what do I love?
What do I love? I love wine. I'm going in the wine business.
Exactly. Like, I do love wine and the lifestyle around wine. It's lifestyle. I love lifestyle. And so I thought about wine, and I shadowed a winemaker for a while, and he showed me, and it's the same thing with fashion, right? It's very glamorous to everyone else, but behind the scenes, it's not pretty.
Hmm.
And the wine business is the same thing. When winemaker, vineyards, all of that, there's a lot of work on the back end to deliver this lifestyle for you. And same with fashion. Honestly, you see what on the runway, on people, on photo shoots, it's glamorous, it's beautiful, but
Mm.
getting to that product is very hard and it's not glamorous. And so blazers, I always loved GQ, James Bond. Um, and I wanted that for women. And like, I really want a good looking suit, a good looking blazer that just makes you feel so badass because you look so good and it's so strong and courageous. And I wanted that, but then I also that's why I said the Oprah of fashion, but I wanted that to inspire you to step into your power, when you wear it. So our tagline is armoring you from the outside with our blazer because it's like an armor, and building you up from the inside with everything else that we do as a company. And so It's
Mhm.
the armor that I'm providing
Mm.
you to go about your day, to go and achieve your dreams, to take that next step, big or small, to ask for that promotion, because blazers, talking to different like psychologists, because of how it's structured, it does change your mood and it does boost your confidence. So that, paired with everything else that I said, Madison Savile, I named it Madison Savile for that reason. Savile's for Savile Row in London, known for its bespoke suiting for men. I wanted the same for women. And then Madison means gift of God and warrior. It is armoring the warriors of the world in the many hats that we as women have to wear every day to show up, to take that next step again, to achieve all the things that we want to achieve as women.
What a cool story. And I was actually going to ask, where did the name come from? But you've obviously explained it. I love the whole badass kind of James Bond
Yes.
to the woman. Like that. And that is just so beautiful. But do you know what? The whole time you're speaking about this, and I can see you're wearing a blazer now, those listening can't see. But what I love is that, again, what we spoke about at the beginning, that
Yeah.
on the inside,
Yeah.
it's not just the outer wear, but then you flash the blazer and you've got these
Yes.
words of inspiration, this permanent like affirmation that is built into it, that
Yes.
is actually physically being worn on your body like armor. Like that is just gorgeous.
Thank
So
you.
when you were little, and I know we have touched on this
Yeah.
privately, but where does fashion come into it? Like, were you dressing dolls or like I get the whole concept of the armor and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
inspiration. What about the design part of it though?
Oh my goodness. That's I always say that actually I'm reminded by people in the industry, the fashion industry as well. They will tell me, Diana, do you know that you chose the hardest thing to do in the hardest industry, which is women's blazers? And I'm like, of course I did.
Oh,
I know.
exactly.
I don't like it to be easy, you know. And I I always say it's a very expensive MBA course is what I did because I did not have a fashion background. Um, I do have that in my family ish, meaning when my mom came to America, so from an immigrant family, my mom is a single mom, also part of the story of why I've created Madison Savile. She worked in the factories when she came to America, and she had this pair of fabric shears that my aunt didn't give me until I said that I am creating Madison Savile. And my mom at that time, even though today, like I told you, she would anytime I run into any issue or challenge, she's like, why don't you just go back to corporate? But she had admitted to me in the past that she said she always secretly wanted one of her girls to be in fashion.
But
But
never told one of the girls that.
nope, nope, because she knows
No.
how hard it is. She
Right.
knows
Okay.
how hard it's going to be. And again, parents just want the best for their children, to be
Mhm.
well off and all of that. And so she knows how hard it was going to be because she was in it. And so when she said that, that was when my aunt presented me her shears. And so now I have her shears that she started off in America with in the factory for Madison Savile.
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh my God, that is so beautiful. And how did you feel receiving those?
It made me very emotional
I'm
because
emotional.
I, it made me
Listening.
very emotional. Meaning, yes, it's something that symbolized when my family came to America. They didn't have much of anything, and everybody was working so hard in factories, and to be able to give the opportunities that my sisters and I have now to really go do and create and follow your dreams, which is what I'm doing, and to be able to now possess those shears that started all our life here in America.
Oh, I love that symbolism is just glorious. And so when you decided to do this, what did you do? Like, I mean,
Oh
if you
yes.
yeah, that this is fascinating.
So when I decided, okay, not wine.
Yeah, not wine.
So blazers and suits. At the time when I was working at Microsoft, I did not want a degree in fashion. I wanted to
Why
learn
not?
the basics, the foundation
Okay. Yeah.
of fashion. So then when I have people that I hire that I bring on board to the team, I actually know what they're talking about, and I'm not going to get, steamrolled or lied to or whatever, right? Tricked. Um, at least I know and I understand the foundation of it. I did not want a degree because this is just me, right? That I know you don't need a degree to create a fashion brand. So you need a degree if you want to become a doctor. That's very
Mm.
necessary, as we know why.
Kind of
But
important.
as a fashion brand, you actually don't need a fashion degree to create a fashion company. And so, knowing that, I wanted to know the basics and the foundation. And so, I started taking night classes when I was at Microsoft. So, I took night classes, build the basics, and then brought on consultants in the fashion industry to help me start building Madison Savile. And along the way, I will bring on people to the team that have had, fashion brands 20 plus years, just sold their company. So they've been through from A to Z. And that's how I learned. Because as we know, yes, going to college, all that, but you really don't know until you're in your job and you're working. And that's where you're building your skills and you're learning. And I did all of that with my first collection, like things from beginning to end. I learned the full fashion cycle, producing, sourcing, supply chain, everything. And so that's why I call it a very expensive MBA course.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. But you're doing all this. So how does it feel going from your normal day job, which had been in finance tech, and you obviously are very good at it, even though people like you, not your work. Now learning something, and you're a beginner again, right? You're a novice. This is not something that comes second nature. You've had to go out of your way. How did it feel being new at something again and being that beginner?
It's tough, and it's still tough because I'm still
Mm,
considered new, a small
mm,
brand, right?
mm,
When you were asking me that question, it just made me reflect of when I started my finance career at Deloitte, as the newbie, right? Um, Everything was just so hard, and I wanted to give up so many times because it's sink or swim. When you're the
mm.
big four, they're like, "Here you go, good luck."
And so many people want those jobs, right? So
Exactly,
you gotta hold on
exactly.
to it. Yeah.
It's initiation into the business world is what I called it, because you're dealing with all of these different leadership, different people, different industry, and so you got to learn quick, and it's fast paced, and it was hard. But you ask me now, or a few years in, I can do all of that in my sleep.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I remember just sitting at home after a day's work, and just mulling over hours and hours and hours, like, how do I do this? I don't know how to do this. And now I can do it in my sleep. Same thing with this is I'm a newbie, and so it just everything was is just so hard, and learning, and as an entrepreneur, you're always learning, and I always have to remind myself, again, as an entrepreneur, it's this is part of the experience. Like,
Mm,
you are going to have to learn certain legal issues, certain things, and again, trademarking and all kinds of things that you don't even think about, and the laws change all the time. And so it is tough, but then it's also, you have to kind of reflect on it, that everything in the beginning is going to take time. And
mm,
so this whole journey, and building that respect, I guess you can say, because now that you've been in, finance or so for so long, um, you're looked at as a subject matter expert,
mm, mm,
or oh,
mm.
CFO, you can be a CFO. But when you think about it in the beginning, you're like, I don't even know what I'm documenting. And same we're here is as a new brand because and you think about it with the finance aspect, right? Out of college, you know, people, there's a lot of churn because it's like how many people can stick it out, right? The first year, the
Mhm.
second year. And it's the same thing with any industry. But with fashion, you'll notice like suppliers that you reach out to in the beginning and they're like, you're a new brand, huh? So they'll try to, you know, um, negotiate certain price higher than if you were seasoned, you would know what the actual price is or what the average or
Mhm.
the right price is. But they smell fresh blood in the industry, so you have to go through that. But then you'll notice that their tone or how they treat you start changing the longer you're in the industry, because then you come back like, oh, they're still around. Oh, so they made it through the first year, the second year, the third year. And so it's interesting because you can reflect upon both sides, two different industries, but it's kind of
Mm.
very similar.
Absolutely. And have there been moments in doing this where you've actually just wanted to give it all away and think, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. Like, have you ever had that or thought or questioned, do I really have what it takes to
Uh,
turn this into something that I can really, take somewhere special?
well, Kim, it depends on what day and time you ask me.
Tell me about this.
I mean, that's the honest truth because
Mm,
I there are good days, there are bad days, good times during the day where in the beginning, maybe the start of the day, you have really good news and things are going great and smooth, and something happens, and you're like, why? Or, yes, there are those days, and that's why I said it depends on what day and what time during the day that you ask me, because this is actually part of the journey. In a lot of founder organizations. And again, it goes back to in the beginning when I was telling you, being a part of the right community can help you get through these days. Because I have friends that are entrepreneurs that will check in with each other. And, there are days when it's like,
Mm.
I, nope, I'm not going to make it. And they're like, pull you off away from the cliff. You're like, nope, not today. you know, just give it a day. And it's okay not to
Mm.
be okay. That's one
mm,
thing that I keep reiterating more and more these days because, you see social media, you see the highlight reel, and you
Mm.
see success stories, but they're not overnight successes. And it's the in between that a lot of people don't talk about because you have so much pressure as a business to look like you're successful, to look like you're a big brand, but you're in the in between where you're building still and you're wondering, am I going to get the next loan, or where do I find the next investor, or how many months do I have before my cash, runs out, cash flow? Like all of these are just constant questions for entrepreneurs, business owners. And being able to talk about it and creating a safe space to say, it's okay to talk about these things. Recently, I was speaking at a gala. I was introducing a keynote speaker, and I opened up about that. That a month and a half ago, it was very hard for me, where I was struggling. To your question, where
Yeah.
like it's putting a strain on my marriage, the stress, the constant, like how much I'm planning to go to wholesale, how much more money does it require? All these years of just the constant trying to figure out how to make this work. And it was hard to get out of bed. It was because you get to a point of burnout and
Mm.
exhaustion,
Mm.
and then you start questioning. And I opened up about that where it reached a point like, do I still want to continue to do this, or do I have a different path, or I just need a sign that this is my purpose and that I need to keep going. And so I shared that story, and oh my goodness, Kim, I can't tell you how many people. It was a room of 280 people. Um, Men and women afterwards came up to me and opened up about, I'm struggling right now. Um, and I can relate to what you're saying, or that was me 3 weeks ago. So people were emotional and crying.
Mm.
And I still have people come up to me to this day when I go to events and they'll say, you don't know me, but I know you because I was at that gala and I heard you speak and I cried for 3 days afterwards because it opened up something for me that I needed to process, you know?
Do you know, I love this. I am so grateful that you have shared this and that you have had the courage to be honest, not just here on this podcast, but in general,
Yeah.
because I think that's one thing that exactly what you just said, we compare and we see only what we see that people want us to
Yeah.
see. We don't always know what's really going on. And it looks like, oh, well, she's done it easy. She's gone from this career completely swapped. She's done it easy. Look how she's going.
Yep.
To hear the real stuff, the stuff that goes on inside.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That is just beautiful. But knowing all of that, you still keep going.
Yes. And
Like,
that's what I keep telling people. It's okay not to feel okay. And it can take days, it could take weeks. There are many days when I'm on the floor and my husband has to pick me up off the floor. But the important thing is that you get up.
yeah. And you get up. And so why do you get up? What's the reason why you keep getting up? What's driving that?
It's the purpose behind the company.
Yeah.
Going back to what I was sharing with you before, that there is Madison Savile is so much more than a fashion company. It is more that I can't see now, that I want to make more of an impact with this company to change the narrative. Because also going back to, my mom, single mom, my grandmother had 14 kids. So I have a lot of aunts.
Mm.
But just seeing them and that generation to just struggle, right? With, also their rights and what they can do and their freedom and all of these things, where even to this day in 2024, I feel like we should be way further ahead than where we are as women. And that's my purpose, is like, no, there's a bigger purpose than you, that you need to keep going, because it's past, present, and future women.
Mm. But
You
I
don't,
love that. That makes so much sense.
it's the ripple effect, right? It's even the littlest thing that you can do, just the simple kindness that you give to someone that day when you're walking down the street, because they might be having a really bad day and they're in a very dark place, but your simple kindness is the ripple effect that just impacted their life. So the things that you do, small or big or large, makes a big impact, but you just don't see it, right? You don't realize it. And so that is what kept me going, is because I got the messages, that I needed that week when I was struggling, because I asked for the messages. I asked for signs, for message to really help me know that I am on the right path. I am walking in my purpose. And I got 3 of them that week. I didn't get 1, I got 3, to just go, keep going. This is where you need to be and where you need to go. It might feel rough right now, but everybody goes through this journey. And so just knowing your purpose and knowing why. You have to know your why. And I'm sure you hear that often, but it's true. Because if it's just tied to the money aspect, it's tough. You're like, okay, I'll just go do something else.
Well, totally. And Diana, something I don't think I've even shared on the podcast is when I've made the move from being in financial services to doing the work now empowering women. And at the worst time possible, I've got 2 kids now at private school. And, I know it's in my heart. I know this is my why and the bigger purpose. But to help my husband understand,
Yeah.
I actually went and saw a psychic.
Yeah.
Now, there are people that don't believe in that, but for me, I just wanted, he didn't even know I was going. I just wanted to go to
Well, no,
just get,
no.
yeah, but just to get a totally different perspective, like
Right.
completely from a place that is not your sort of run of the mill, normal business coaches
Right.
and that, which I've had all of those as well.
Right.
Just to confirm or help me validate that, yes, I am on the right path and keep going. Don't stop now because, you've come this far and you've got big, big things to
Yeah.
do. So I totally get. What is there any? Were the signs clear? Were they things you could share? Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that week, so I don't know if we talked about this a little bit. So Jamie Kern-Lima, you know who she is.
yeah,
She's the founder of
oh,
It Cosmetics.
obsessed with her. Yes,
So
Jamie Kern-Lima, one of my favorite humans. Yes.
she
Mm,
was our keynote speaker at the galas, along with Candace Nelson, the founder of Sprinkles, and guest on Shark Tank. And so two of the three messages were related to Jamie, but the first one that week was I met with one of our members, and it was because originally she wanted to ask me about advice about fashion show, how to put on a fashion show, things that she needs to do. But then she said she told her she was so busy she pushed out the fashion show, and she actually questioned herself of maybe I should just tell Diana so I don't have to waste her time, since fashion show is not a thing right now. But then she said there was a voice that told me that I still needed to meet with you. And, whether it's having a one-on-one, because I've never had a one-on-one with you before, whatever it is, but then there was a push, a nudge for me to meet with you. And we sat there, Kim, and she just kept saying, I'm like, I feel like I need to tell you this, that you just need to keep going. Like, just
mhm.
that bigger things are coming. And I looked at her and I started getting emotional. And I'm like, well, let me give you some context of what I've been going through this week.
Oh,
And she
wow.
said, Diana, I don't know what it is, but I almost canceled or rescheduled. But then something told me that there was a voice that nudged me. And I'm here to tell you, whatever this message is, that you need to keep going. And I'm like, oh, wow.
That's a sign.
Here,
There
that's
is
the
no
sign.
doubt. That's a sign. That's very, very clear.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the second was Jamie's book, Worthy,
Mm,
that came in the mail. I actually wasn't expecting it to come in the mail. And everything in that book was just
mm,
what I needed to hear to keep going, right? I started reading it. And that Saturday of that week, I joined her virtual seminar, which I've never done a seminar like this before. It was like a 13-hour
mm.
seminar virtual. And I told myself, like, okay, I'll go for an hour, maybe two, just to see what it's like. Oh my goodness. So when the first 2 hours alone, Jamie speaking, and then Oprah made a surprise appearance and told her story. And even though I was with 260,000 people,
I was one of them.
yeah, so
Yes.
like I just felt those words were directed towards me. Like they were
Yeah.
just created for me, even though I was with 260,000 people.
Mm,
And I just bursted into tears because these are exactly the things I needed to hear to keep
mm.
going. And those were the three that week that just hit real hard. Mhm.
Oh, and they are, if you didn't believe in signs, fruit, you'd get all of those together and go, oh my goodness, there is absolutely that universal intervention that yes, I need to keep going.
Yeah.
And I must say, that unstoppable event that you're talking about, I did that too. And her book, I even did a podcast, just a solo podcast on the book Worthy.
Oh, you did? Me too.
Loved it so much. So
Mhm.
yeah, and I do believe that there are those things that do come to you at the time that you just, you do need it. So
Yeah.
paying attention, and I love that you are really embracing that more intuitive side, embracing your feminine energy, having all the experience that you've had from
Yeah.
finance and tech, but following your dreams. Diana, it is something that so many people would like to do, but they just don't know how to do it, or they struggle finding the courage to do it. So on that note, just what's the next thing you've got to reach in and find some courage for? Or is it actually what you're doing right now?
Great question, because I thought about, it's the courage to keep going, right?
Yeah.
And I say that because I can say a lot of big things that are coming that I have, step into that courage to do. But I say this because I want to remind, those that are listening, that it doesn't have to be, again, the big things. It could be just the courage to keep going, to
Mm.
stay the course, because that is courage in itself, because you don't know what's on the other side. You don't know what's going to happen 6 months from now. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
You don't know. Absolutely. And the beauty is having the courage without knowing, what's in the unknown and still
Exactly.
go exactly like what you've done. Just take the next step,
Exactly.
and the next steps will then reveal themselves on that path.
Exactly.
Diana, oh my gosh. So people want to find out about you. Obviously, I'll put all your details and
Yes.
contact details in the show notes. But where should they go if they just get off this podcast and go, right, I need to go and know more about this woman?
Oh, absolutely. So, well, there's definitely LinkedIn. Well, I'm sure you'll include my
I'll
my
put the
LinkedIn
details.
link.
Yes.
There's a lot of Diana Nguyen's on LinkedIn, so click the one that Kim put in the show notes. But then also, there's also madisonsavile.com. So SAVILE.com. Sign up for our newsletter, email info@madisonsavile.com. That will get to me as well. And so I will see all of that. I would love to hear from all of you that are listening, and what things what courageous things that everyone is getting into. So yeah.
Absolutely. Now, what about your podcast too? What's that called?
Oh, it's called Madison Savile Inspired podcast.
Beautiful.
Thank you for that. Definitely, on Instagram, at Madison Savile. And then my personal is at D as in Diana, T as in Tom, and then Nguyen 21. I'm sure you'll have that too.
I will.
So happy,
Absolutely.
DMs, follow. Yeah, I would love to connect with
Love
all
it.
of you. Mhm.
Oh my gosh. People have got to, and they've got to go and buy your blazers because who doesn't want armor that lets us get up there every day and go and do and live our purpose? Like that is just golden. Diana, I could speak to you all day. I
Same.
will end it here, but thank you, thank you, thank you for coming on. Such an inspiration. Keep going. If you needed a
Thank
sign today,
you.
keep going because you are making a really big difference in so many lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.